till the moment of the fitting, this is when the magic happened, because you can talk about it, but not till you put the clothing onto an actor, you know. I'm so proud and happy that I can make movies that are very female-centric. I think that I would be living in a big house on the beach and maybe already retired if I had some royalties.
You don't understand. This is an Alaya. If you love cinema and if you love fashion, you know this line from Clueless, and you know Mona May's iconic work for the film. Cher started in suit and slip dresses that didn't age a single bit. Mona, I'm really excited to have you as my guest on Profession Costumière. Today we're going to discuss your career, your thoughts on costume design. Welcome, Mona.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I always love talking about my work and my movies and share the passion and creativity to inspire others. I think that's kind of what my life is about, and dedicated my life to it. So love sharing it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mona. So actually, my first question would be about how you became a costume designer. What led you to this wonderful profession?
I get asked that a lot, and it's such a kind of a different road that I took to costume design. I was one of those young girls that loved clothes, and was dressing my dolls and drawing a lot, and putting my little princesses outfits on the wall, and telling mom what to wear, and growing up cleaning her closet. And so really fashion was kind of my really beloved thing. I've always loved magazines and making little collages, and even as a child making flower dresses out of flower petals. And I was very lucky to grow up with a very supportive family, that I was able to take art classes, and my mom was an art dealer, so I had a lot of art around me and color, and so I kind of grew up in that very kind of colorful and fun environment. And that's what I ended up studying. I studied fashion, and went to school in Europe. I'm originally from Poland and Germany, so I studied in Europe. I ended up wanting to go to the States, so I went to New York and then ended up in LA. Just really wanted to have my own collection. But in LA, I was going to Fashion Institute, and while in school, I was hanging out with friends, as you are, partying, and a bunch of them were from film school, USC and UCLA film school here in LA, and they were doing the little films, and they said, "Hey, you in fashion, help us. So we need some clothes for the film." And I was like, "Okay, I can help." And really, truly, from the first moment, when I got the script and read the script, and I was like, "Oh my God, now I have to tell a story with clothes. Like, I have to dress these characters. I have to figure out who they are," kind of, the whole psychological thing, and, working with the director, working kind of creatively with a bunch of people. It's a very, different process, that fashion design. And I really loved it. From the first moment, I really thought it was so much more than just clothes, that just fashion and what's cool now, what's, trendy. Not to discount fashion, because I still love fashion, and I've been very lucky to use fashion in my films. So I kind of was able to marry my two loves.
Yes.
But from that moment, I just was fascinated. I was fascinated, and I love the collaborative process of filmmaking too. And that was really kind of caught my bug, and that's how it started. And 27 years later, here we are.
And you've traveled so much, because on IMDb, I also saw that you were born in India, if I'm correct, and you say you're also from Europe. So yes. I'm kind of curious, actually, if all those countries and different colors and fashion might have also influenced your work.
I think so. I think that, it's a big part of my kind of how I see the world is because of my kind of upbringing, international upbringing. I was born in India. I was there till I lived there till I was 3 years old, and I moved to Poland, which is a very different world at the time, communism and dark, and kind of a huge contrast to India. I mean, in India, I think growing up, being a baby, seeing the colors and being in that environment of super bright the yellow saffron and the pink. I'm sure that's imprinted in my head somewhere. very deeply. And then I lived in Germany, and then I came to the States. So really kind of, and I travel extensively all over the world. I think that it's a different point of view, I think, that maybe most people have who are maybe just born in one country, like just an American designer or a French designer. I think that it really helped me. And I think Clueless, maybe successful because of this as well, because I think I had a broader view of the fashion. I wasn't really stuck kind of in the American fashion or just European fashion. I was kind of, now we say global, global point of view. We didn't have that term then, but I think I already had kind of that initially, instinctively a bigger view of what it is, so I think Clueless didn't get stuck in any country. It didn't get stuck in any, even though it's 90s, because it's kind of, to me, it's timeless. The fashion to be now still so popular and still so beloved and kind of wearable in a way to this day. I think it's because of that upbringing. I think it really, it's always how I look at world, like really from all different kind of places. So it gives me more of a overview. And I think that way I can stay fresh, and kind of timeless. And I think that in the movies, it's really important, maybe in fashion is a little bit different because you want to be changing and moving things. I think you don't want to date yourself in the film. I think that it's, even though, let's say you're doing a period movie, of course, but I think in some way, I want my films to live forever. And I want my films to, when you're looking at them, it's like, oh, that's cool. Okay, maybe this is kind of, retro-ish, but still I love it. It's cool. It's fun. And somehow that's my talent, which I'm really lucky to have, that kind of visual and creative idea that I come up with.
Thank you for sharing that. And actually, you started mentioning Clueless. You have done so many things in your career. I tried to focus my questions on 3 films. And of course, the first one would be Clueless. I had a few questions about the film. And the first one would be how you got involved in that project.
It was a very lucky break in a way. I was just starting out in Hollywood. There was a MTV at the time. MTV was happening. And no, that's how old I am, kids who are young kids who are watching. But so I was involved with a lot of music videos, and I was doing commercials. I worked the Run DMC, and really trying to get my foot in. And that's kind of how you start. I was able to do a pilot with Emmy Heckling, the director and writer of Clueless, and the pilot, which is like I don't know if people watching know what pilot is. It's a one episode that you do for a TV show. It's almost like a, testing for the TV series. If it gets sold, if people like it, and then studio usually picks it up and then they make 10 or 15 episodes. So we did the pilot. The pilot did not get picked up, but we super connected creatively. She's really an amazing director, not only an amazing writer, but she's totally into fashion, which was so fun to work with someone like that who, in the day we didn't have computers. So imagine we would bring the tear sheets from magazines and, we would have the same tear sheets. And she loved my sensibility of my color, kind of this feminine touch that I have. And when she wrote Clueless, she called me and said, I think you're really the right person to do it because you have European upbringing. You kind of understand what's happening in Europe on the runway shows. You have fashion background. And we want to kind of bring that to this film. These characters live and breathe fashion. So it was really lucky. We kind of hit it off, met. And when Clueless happened, she hired me to do it. And that was really incredible because it was really one of my first bigger films. I didn't have an agent yet. I had to do my deal myself. It's hard. You have the agents, you have lawyers, and it was a little scary. And I mean, it was the 90s. So, the film business was a little bit different than now. The movie wasn't really a big budget movie. It was kind of like a medium size, maybe $25 million. So the costume budget also wasn't huge. People who make the budgets don't really understand fashion, or like even if they're reading that the girls are going to. to Europe, let's say, get designer clothes, they don't really understand it. So the budget was really quite small for what the movie called. So it was really interesting. I had to be very resourceful because, and that's a very interesting thing, that in the 90s, when we were prepping the movie 1995, 94, 95, it was all grunge. People really wore grunge clothes. So we went to high school to research the looks and look at the locations, and every girl or boy looked the same. It was baggy clothes, big t-shirts. It's kind of what's happening right now on the streets too. The kids started
coming back again.
And I really had to create a whole new world, a world that didn't exist at the time. And that was the challenge. I looked at the runway shows, what's happening in London and Paris, and saw the trends, because it's everything 6 months ahead or even more. But then what's really important to bring that back. And as a costume designer, I'm not just creating clothes and looks, I'm creating characters. And this is really important, I think, to understand that, we want to create authentic people that audiences can relate to. When you're looking at in a movie, an actor comes on the screen and they don't have to say a word. Within 30 seconds or 10 seconds, you probably know exactly who they are. Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they sexy? Are they depressed? Are they happy? Everything about them, the clothes are saying. And that's what I love about costume design. This is really kind of my, like drug. Like, I love creating these people that when you're watching the film, it's like, oh, and that's what was important in Clueless, that Alicia's character Cher and Dion were real girls, that they were not just models strutting around in some high heels and crazy clothes that you didn't understand. They had to be translated into high school. They had to be youthful. They had to be, Amy Heckerling really wanted this film to be very feminine. It was all about making girls girls. And again, I think I kind of went into my brain and really pulled all these classic things that I feel that are timeless, which is, A-line skirts, cup sleeves, empire waist, little cardigans. I mean, stuff that's forever looks good on women, girls, women. I think I think is also really cool in this film, that it's something that, like, when you're looking at the film, you're like, oh, I want to wear this. This is so cute.
Definitely.
No matter if it's 90s or whatever it is, because I really work with women and who they are as women, as girls, as, what their bodies are, what the character is, what is good for Cher. She had great legs, color of the skin, all of that has to come together. So it was a really fun experience to be able to marry the fashion, translate it into the world of, Beverly Hills rich girls, but still keep it very youthful. And, be inspired by things like plaid, where the plaid came from. It came from, okay, it's really a school uniform, right? Catholic school, plaid skirts, school, first day. But what would Cher do? Cher would take and buy a Dolce & Gabbana suit, the yellow one. And, again, a good story for your listeners is that, it's not just arbitrarily I pick a suit and I say, okay, you're going to wear this now, this yellow suit. It's really about where the scene is happening, outside the quad, a lot of green in California. A lot of people are going to cross in front of her. Lots happening. She's the queen. It's the opening of the film. And we decided on the plaid. I had a few suits for the fitting. I had a blue one, a red one, and a yellow one. And I was really, really thinking the blue is going to be amazing, because I thought blonde, the blue is going to be so pretty. Yellow was cool, but again, hard color to wear for blondes,
Yes.
Red was kind of cool. We tried the blue on and it was like, no, it's just not it. Red ended up being too Christmassy. And she put the yellow one on. It was like, oh, I mean, we all almost like, like you have goosebumps on the arm. It's like, this is it. She's just this ray of sunshine, this queen, this beauty it looked beautiful with her hair. We put the white t-shirt with the yellow cardigan, with the white over the knee stockings. And, the shoes were very girly too. They were Mary Jane's, more of the shoes are very youthful. And I think that, again, grounded it. So all of the details really made it more authentic who these girls are.
And actually, rewatching the film, I also noticed that like fashion is so important that it's even like in the dialogues. For
Yes.
instance, like I quoted the Elia quote, which is wonderful.
Yes.
There's like, what the hell is that? A dress says who? Calvin Klein.
Right.
Or
Right.
like a watch doesn't really go with that outfit, daddy, when he's asking for the time. So I was
Right.
kind of curious to know like how it went between the script and your own design. I mean, for like the Elia quote, for instance, or the Calvin Klein, was it written in the script and then you chose the costume, or the
No,
other
it
way
was
around, I
not.
guess?
There was a scene about it, but what exactly it's going to be, it was up to me to find, because we didn't know we are going to get an Alaya. I mean, you have to remember too, this is pre-PR firm madness. There was no people sending me a bunch of clothes for free, like maybe they do for Sex and the City or other movies now,
Yes.
Also, the actors were unknown. Alicia Silverstone just did a video. There was not huge, humongous stars. So it was all my resourcefulness of like, I saw this Alaya dress and I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be great for the Christmas party. But how do we get it? We tried to call the PR people in Paris and like, can you lend it to us? But she has to get on the ground. So, do you have a sample that, you know what I mean? So because we have to be upfront if anything happens, we didn't have $4,000, to spend on a dress.
Of course.
So it kind of, we worked together with Amy on figuring it, the things are. And I mean, when we found this slip dress, the Calvin Klein dress, that's how it ended up, because it was the most nude and looking like naked. So I have to work with the scene and what the scene calls for, and then be able to, with my resourcefulness. I mean, some, for example, there's also the beginning of the movie, and she said, oh, did you skin a collie?
Yes.
So that was actually, I brought the backpack and then we wrote it in a script because it was something like this, or the Dr. Seuss hat, so it was a very fluid process. And that's what was so cool with Amy, that we worked so closely together to make this so much more rich by allowing this to be a little bit more organic. And I think what's interesting, what you just said too about the fashion and how the fashion looks in the movie, because that was also working very closely with the director of photography, Bill Polk, who's genius. And he really took the camera and it was like a fashion eye. You don't see this in movies normally. It's like you have this, you have full shot, then you go to medium shot, and that's it. Here the camera goes to her earrings and down her legs and into the backpack. You have long shots of them walking. You see the outfit, when you're walking through a party, you see other people. So that was a very kind of unique and fresh approach too by the camera. And I think it made the fashion so much more like you saw every detail. It was really almost a character in the film itself. And it was a beautiful collaboration. It was a really fun film. We, none of us knew that it's going to last this long, but we were so passionate about this script and having it such a wonderful director. And, the ingenue actors and, everything was really, we were like, oh my God, this is so much fun. Let's make this happen. And this is so cool. And there was nothing like this before. This was really first kind of girl film, later
definitely.
on, you had the Mean Girls after, you Legally Blonde, all those movies, but we really were the originals. And that was so kind of fun. That's what we knew maybe about it. It was super fresh and different.
And another scene I wanted to ask you about is like actually the opening scene that takes us into Cher's dressing. And she had like a computer, brand new generation at that time, that is actually helping her like making the outfits. So yes. I guess that's also like a scene in which you were involved in kind of in a regular way, because you probably worked like with the computer effects or something to like figure out how it would work.
Yes. And it was all Amy heckling, she thought of the idea. And to this day, we don't really have a good program doing it. It's kind of crazy, right? You would think there would be something.
I wish there was.
Right. But yeah, there was working together with Amy and, the visual effects people who created it. So we photographed the clothes and then we put the mismatch, and then ding. Then we have the, the proper outfit. So all of that was so unique and I think fun and, very new at the time. And that's what was exciting, I think, about this film. Even Alicia Silverstone, it was her first movie and she she was like a hippie girl, already an activist about animal rights. And, she's been vegan for years and written many books. But already then, she just ran around with a bunch of dogs, and she would bring them in sweatpants. And so it really was a process for her as well to learn how to wear the clothes, how to be that Beverly Hills girls, how to twirl the hair and, speak that way. So it was very interesting. There was a lot of fittings. I mean, she had 60 changes.
Yes, it's so impressive. I read that figure 60.
A lot of clothes to try on, to figure out, and she was just an amazing trooper, But it's interesting, years later, probably her son is like 10, I think. So maybe let's say 4 or 5 years ago, we were watching the movie. There's like a big screening in LA, the cemetery. And the movie was like, I think an anniversary, maybe 20th anniversary. And she brought her son and to see it first time. Aww. And we were hanging out. And, this was interesting. The first time she said to me, Mona, I never understood how important the clothes were. Like, I just was not really into clothes. Like, it just seemed so trivial to me. Mm-hmm. And now really looking back, now wearing great clothes and understanding fashion and kind of really high fashion, designer fashion, she sees it differently, so it's fun. But, everybody was great. I mean, everybody brought something to the characters. I mean, even Stacey Dash as Dion, she was already sassy and had her little skirts and, wanted shorter. And, the color palette for her was so beautiful, which is so fun. It's still great color palette even now, for her, all the bright colors. And the boys, and I had to dress everybody in school, the whole background, like all the kids came in the morning at 5 a.m. and we gave them clothes and backpacks and hats and jewelry. So it was tremendous amount of work, to really create this world, because what's important, I think, as a costume designer, is not just the main characters, it's the whole entire population of the film, all the characters, all the little people that you see in the corner or sitting around the tables, and color palette, really specific color palette for that movie too. We didn't use a lot of black or gray. Also with the production designer, he created this sets very simply. So then the kind of very elaborate clothing can jump up and not fight with the set. So, it's a lot of thought goes into the whole kind of idea what the film is going to look like on the screen, and again, when you have great directors who like Amy Heckerling, who really understands that whole process and what each person does and how to connect us and how to, I knew everything that was happening in the art department. I talked to the DP before and said, tomorrow we have this, she's going to drop the pen and he's going to go down the leg and we're going to see the shoe, all of that was discussed prior.
The second movie I wanted to discuss with you is Enchanted. So it's like, for those who haven't seen it, it's like a fairy tale where like the princess comes from like the fairy tale cartoonesque world to like New York City today, like, I mean, at the time where the movie was shot. So I felt it was probably a very interesting experience as well for you, because you kind of brought to life, and like in the modern world, all the very famous fairy tale characters that we know, the princess, the prince, the evil witch. So I was really curious about it as well.
It was an amazing project, as for a costume designer, because I got to really make everything, from scratch, and really maybe not recreate, but update the old characters. And, because it was a Disney movie, I was allowed to go to Disney Vault and look at all the drawings from the 30s and 20s and 40s and, really kind of familiarize myself. And again, it was a, journey of a woman. And I think that's a lot of my movies are about that. It's like a journey of these females finding themselves, empowering themselves. And that was really beautiful story of this kind of, princess who comes from another world, that everything is perfect and we just sing and don't even talk. And how does she find herself? How does she starts feeling and experiencing real emotions? And that was a really beautiful way to support it with the costumes, when she comes out of the manhole in her wedding dress, and also working with animation and live action. So designing costumes in animation, which is very 2D drawing, very flat. and then creating the costume in live action, which is like now exploding with 3-dimensional butterflies. And that was really important to the director, Kevin Lima, who comes from animation, to marry the two and really see the difference of the two worlds, how flat one is and kind of perfect. And in a way, we also created everything that was Andalusia, the world that she came from was very kind of Art Nouveau, circular and round. As then she comes to New York, which is very kind of linear and harsh and dark and gray. So it was really, really amazing to create these characters, be very true to them, but also give something fresh. It was very interesting to creating this wedding dress, because when you think of little princesses, their waists are little tiny waists, and then you have the big sleeves. And now I have to translate it to a human. So how big the skirt had to be, giant, kind of like, behind this like humongous. I mean, it weighs so much. We had to have a metal hoop skirt and then 100 of yards of layers of the fabrics. And I had to design the dress kind of in a way. We had this overlay, which was the bustier with the overlay, and then the skirt actually detached, so she could take it off in between the takes and take a break, because it was
very useful.
Yeah, and then we had a little stool too underneath, so she could kind of sit on it and relax, and Amy Adams was such an amazing actress too. She was so into it, and really being in the fittings and processing each costume, because then we go from the big dress to the dress that she cuts out from the curtain. So it's again very princess, very empire, very kind of cartoon dress, with the cute little puff sleeves and the beautiful, and again the fabric is a little bit Art Nouveau from his curtain, the beautiful blue with her red hair. But then each outfit, as you look, then she gets the short dress that I designed, which is like a little almost cocktail dress, something she bought at, Dior dress or something. Already more modern, right? A little less princessy, a little more functional. And then we go all the way to the ball when we have this purple gown. And now everything's stripped, everything that came from that other world, the big hair, the crazy makeup and eyelashes and perfect skin, and everything is gone. Now she's like really who she is. She's stripped. So the dress was really important to be, I think, very fitted to see her body shape now, because it was always hidden. No embellishments. The color we talked a lot about the color, like purple kind of always stood out to me as the right color, because black was too harsh. You don't want to do red. What other color do you want to do? It's very also princely in a way. She's still a princess. And I love that the hair was really simple. You see blemishes on her skin. It was wonderful. It's again such a great story. And in a lot of my movies, really, I tell the story of this kind of, becoming, finding yourself. If you see my movie like Never Been Kissed, House Bunny, a lot of films, Wedding Singer, a lot of movies, it's kind of my forte. I love women. I love really supporting young girls, seeing themselves as who they are, finding kind of to be okay in their bodies, in their shape, in their mind, understanding that they are smart, that they are unique. So all that, I get to really be so lucky in my career to do that. I think that we do get a lot from seeing ourselves on the screen. Especially as a woman, I think we need more and more empowerment. It's happening slowly. There's much more movies. And I think now with Netflix and everything else, there's so much more content.
Yes.
That seeing more strong women, assassins and not just moms or girlfriends or, pretty accessories. So I'm really happy that I get to kind of join in the fight, in a sense, for women, and movies are powerful.
Definitely. And actually, speaking of movies in a more general way, I was wondering if there's any movie costumes that you like, especially like in the history of films, like costumes you love watching that maybe inspire you or you just cherish.
I'm inspired by so many things. It's hard to say one thing. I mean, I love Tim Burton stuff. I think his is so interesting. His movies and the costume designer who does that. I love Bonnie and Clyde. I mean, that was so modern at the time too. I mean, American Gigolo. I mean, there's just so many different, it's interesting when fashion makes it into the film and, of the time. And then you look at movies like Cleopatra and you're just looking at this crazy, incredible. I mean, like, they had so much money. It was such a different times. Costume designer had like workrooms of people and, they make the armor and stuff. So, different times. I mean, now it's very different because we have less resources, less time. Now with COVID, even more difficulties making the costumes with the restrictions and people and time and we're still wearing masks on set. So it's tough. It's really, even from when I started making films, in the 90s to what's happening now, it's just a very different process. It's kind of this big access and a way of making films. It give it to more of Netflix, which is faster, quicker. You have to deliver it fast. I mean, I work all over the world. I just did, some films in Berlin and Germany, and you get actors flown into Berlin from London like day before we're shooting, and it's like you gotta make it very fast. So, it's a different environment. I kind of miss the old Hollywood in a way, where you had time and there was more time for exchange. I think the COVID also, what happened, to me, exchange of artistic information in person is so much more because you can touch the fabric. I can look at something. I can look at the paint chips. When you connecting over Zoom, it's so hard. I mean, I don't know if I'm seeing this color the same way on my screen, and it's kind of hard to interject. You have to like, can I say something? And then you're like, oh my god, five people, everybody's like listening to me saying something wrong, or you feel stupid. So it's a different process, which I really miss, the process sitting around a big table and like, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm doing, bringing the boards, bringing the swatches, so it's just different. And maybe the younger people are more used to it because this is all they know. I'm kind of old school. I miss the tactile part of it and looking people in the eye. And, the one thing that is great that you still have to have fittings.
Yes.
And that's the moment, I think, for every costume designer too. That's when everything happens because you can, like I can do my boards, right? Mood boards. I do all this visual preparation that I show to the director, I show to the actor. So we are on the same page, then my shoppers or whoever, we can make the stuff, they're sketching, all that stuff has to happen before because it's all money and time. But really not till the moment of the fitting. This is when the magic happened because you can talk about it, but not till you put the clothing onto an actor. Like I said, with the yellow suit, you can have these ideas, this would be great, but then maybe the A-line skirts are terrible because they have bad knees and you never knew about it. Or
it's a moment of truth, right?
Completely. Or they don't want to show the décolleté, or things you thought maybe look way too sexy for the character. And now we have to go way more bigger, baggier or something to create that mood, So it really is the moment of truth, like you said. It's to me the most exciting part of my job because it's really, that's when you get into it. And a lot of actors have great instincts. They feel it too. And that's when the moment, the costume is born, really the idea comes together. And then, I take pictures of everything. And then I still do big boards. I put the pictures on the boards. And we look at them, and then we can kind of see what works and where something could be direct. Some directors are really detailed. They'll be like, this would be the beginning, that's the end, and or maybe let's change this a little bit. And that's what's so cool. We can tell the story, that way. And in movies, like when you have, 3 girls, like in Clueless, or, House Bunny, we had 7 girls. You have to do this puzzle because it's really like, okay, what is Alicia going to wear? What's Dion going to wear? And they all have to look good on the screen in that scene. And imagine 60 changes, so it's a lot of puzzle. Like, okay, do we have enough colors in the rainbow?
But I was wondering if you like cherish, especially some of your work, like some of the costumes you've created that you really like seeing again, for instance, or.
I mean, I love seeing Queen Narissa from Enchanted. I think it's such a beautiful costume. Yes. It took a lot to make it, and it was really intricate to find a way to show her in a very new way, because I think she's mostly shown in gowns and capes. And it actually got me the job because I proposed something very different, something very kind of unique. Uh, my quote kind of to the director was, hey, she's Queen Narissa. She has all the money in the world and she can transport herself anywhere she wants. So why not she goes to the fashion shows in Paris? So something cool, something interesting, more edgy. And also it was fun to, go from the animation to live action, and then she becomes the dragon. So in her way, the costume kind of is, precursor to the dragon, with this kind of texture of the scales, and the wings of her cape become the wings of the dragon. So that was really beautiful. All the metal work I got to do, the crown that again turns into the dragon horns. And that's really, really kind of, I think, as designers, we love to draw, we love to really get something from concept to, making the fabric, and then, really something that's becoming from nothing. It's not just creating the story through costumes and clothes that you rent or purchase, or they are period even from costume houses. It's something that you really comes somewhere from your brain, and I love, I think, Enchanted for that, because I think it's such a beautiful film. I think all the costumes are just really support the story and are just gorgeous to look at. And I'm very proud of it, But I'm as well proud of Clueless. I mean, that's something amazing. That's a movie can live that long, something
Definitely.
that we still love. I have to show you something. This is Dior.
Yes.
And this is the collection that they did for last fall. I don't know if you know about it, but they did Clueless inspired.
Oh,
wow. This is Dior skirt. They also made a jacket and a dress.
It's amazing. It's so beautiful. Super close from like your original.
And work. They made the black and white plaid too, like Dion. So it's amazing. I mean, that now we have, and this is $4,000, by the way. So, the whole circle, I think, of something, how things are, designed in a film and created, and then come full circle 27 years later, now being designed by, major house, French house.
That's amazing.
So I'm very proud of that, to have such impact on culture and, on fashion. So there's something different about that film. And I think generally, as I said before, I'm so proud and happy that, I can make movies that are very female centric, and really add something to this culture, to us, female, that can be empowering. That's really, and I have such a, I think, talent for a knack, and I think that I somehow instinctually know what's right for character, for comedy, for the actor's body, that it's very uplifting in a way. I don't know what that is, but I think when you watch my movies, there's some kind of energy that you take away from it that's very kind of uplifting. And I think I'm very grateful for that talent. I don't know where it comes from. It's something very instinctual, something that, like we said, came from probably different upbringing, different things. But I think that, some of our, and I think that's maybe for young designers or artists who are out there, I think that we have to believe in our own talent, in our own kind of ability of what we have. Each one of us is very different. But if we can kind of contact that, through, maybe there's meditation, there's really, really kind of honing your craft, working with that, what is it that really makes us unique? I think that really can put us, we can be seen in a way, because there's something different, and unique. And I think when I teach and I talk to young students, I really can't stress that enough, that it's, each one of us is so unique and our point of view is so unique. And that's really what is the most important thing, is the art. If we can believe in that, then I think we can make a mark outside of us, So for me now, I'm a more senior person, I trust that. I understand that kind of part of my talent. And I don't think I'll ever get bored. It's really something that makes me so happy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Actually, was my next question. I was wondering what you like the most about your job. So you kind of answered it already in a
Well, I
way.
think it's I think also it's something that's unpredictable. It's new. Every movie is different. Different artists that you get to collaborate. Different environments. Sometimes it can be scary and hard. I mean, going to another country and working with people you don't know, and you never know how an actor can be in their moods, or directors certain demands, and I mean, again, COVID has not been easy. I think there's a less clothes out there in the world. There's just less things. It's harder to get. Shipping may not arrive. I mean, there's a lot of other stressors. But I think if you can relax and just kind of always know that it's going to work out somehow, and a lot of part of your job, anybody's job, is problem solving.
Yes.
So that's really what it's kind of about, and hopefully problem solving without too much stress and freaking out. Just kind of go, okay, it's not here. Okay, what else can we get? I mean, right now I'm dealing with something. I'm doing these costumes for Halloween for a client, and we can't find lights, these little tiny lights. I need green, kind of pinkish ones. And my assistant is running around LA right now trying to find the lights. And then we found 2 strings of green, but we need 4.
Wow.
And the ones for this, we just found the white ones. And it's like, come on, it's LA. Where is it? But it takes like 4 to 5 days to get it on from Amazon, because it's probably coming from China or somewhere. I don't know. So I have to deliver this dress on Friday. The party's on Friday night. So, it's like those kind of things. Okay,
Wow.
what's plan B? How do you solve it? How do you make it happen? And I love that. I think it's fun. And I love traveling. I'm a gypsy. Again, costume designers are kind of the whole movie craft. I think it's different because you're not home all the time. You don't come home at 5 o'clock and make the dinner. You don't know where you're going to be, where is the project going to take you. It's not very like family oriented kind of business, so you have to be okay with that, I think. And I'm kind of like a gypsy at heart, so it's all right.
I'm actually curious because you showed me the very beautiful Dior skirt, and it's actually a question I'm really interested, because of course you must feel like really honored to see like this kind of homage to, because it really, like, people listening cannot see, but the dress is like tartan yellow, and like even the shape, it really like evokes what you did with Cher characters in the 90s in Clueless. And I'm kind of wondering, because also like it's so iconic. I mean, people kind of dress like Cher for Halloween and everything.
Yes.
It must be like very flattering, but at a point, because I'm also thinking of like what happened with Ginny Bevan, and like the Cruella costumes that were like interpreted and sold like in a fast fashion company. So I was kind of wondering how you feel about all this. Like, where does the homage stop? And like,
It's a very difficult question, because I think on the one hand, I really should be compensated for my designs and my ideas. And I've done many, many movies where even in Enchanted, they've made the little dresses and sold them for Halloween for little kids. I mean, to this day, they're making, not only Cher outfit, but also Romy and Michelle costumes for Halloween. There were dolls made. Stuart Little 2 was made into little, fuzzy bear mouses that wore my costumes. The problem is that, it comes from the original studio system, which we'll all for hire, so we are working for the studio. We sign a contract. They basically own us. So they own our ideas. They even, if we fart, they own our farts. So it's very difficult to break that, because that's something that's been in there from the beginnings, and we as a costume designer guild in Los Angeles, we're trying to break that. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to do, because the studio makes so much money merchandising, and we were never part of the equation, never.
Yes.
So now to change their minds, to get the piece of the pie, it's like changing, I don't know, writing the Bible or something.
The whole system,
whole system. So we've tried, there's some strides made in the video games, because it's a newer business, so the newer rules can apply. I think now we are much more sensitive to it, and there's more talk about it. So I think maybe we can catch things earlier and have at least some discussions through our agents or with the studios. I don't know if there will be ever full compensation, but at least the door has opened a little bit. I mean, like a little crack that we are talking about it. I mean, I'm sad what happened to Jenny, that there was not even a conversation. And I think that's really sad. Okay, maybe she's not even getting paid or get a part of the pie, but involved us. So the merchandise, it's closer to what we designed.
Yes. It was not very respectful. I mean, the clothes were really not good quality and nothing compared to the design she did for the movie. So
right, but again, it's a machine. It's like a money-making machine. I mean, we laugh about it, but it's film business. It is a lot of that. So I think it's unfair. I think it's definitely unfair. I think that I would be living in a big house on the beach and maybe already retired if I had some royalties.
Yes.
And, and actors do get royalties, and like even for assistant directors, director get royalties, so but again, that system was put in place so long ago. So they, that system was already there. I will see, I mean, I'm on the board of the guild, and, we trying to bring respect to our craft too, because the problem also is that, it's a female job.
Definitely.
It's a woman's job. Maybe we just do laundry or, we just dress people. I mean, there's a lot of disrespect can come from some producers too. It's like, oh, you're just going shopping, so we're trying to raise this. And I think there's so much beautiful work now with all the different shows that we have. There's just so much more exposure to us. I think that people are learning what costume designers do. There's more awareness of that craft of ours. I'm in the process of putting a book together about my work and process of costume designer, not like 1,000 pages, but more picture book with anecdotes, but still talking process of, costume designers work. So I think things are changing, things are a little bit changing. I think we have actors behind us too. We have this, I don't know if you...
The Naked Without Us campaign.
Yes, which I think is great. So it's bringing more and more...
Very efficient. And a lot of famous actors were involved. And of course, I mean, it has like a lot of impact on social media. So it's wonderful that they actually got involved. Completely.
And I think now the next round should be directors, because that would be important. And then the next is producers, because the producers make the deal and producers pay the money. Because for us not to get paid as much as the production designers is completely unfair.
Yes. There's like no rational explanation behind that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the director of photography, production designer, costume designer should be completely equal. But because our work really is, most of us are females.
Yes.
Again, here we are fighting for a right in the world, forever. But it's,
it's nice to hear that there might be a crack in the door.
I think so. I think it's happening. And I think that also because of the crack of the door where the audience are interested enough, more interest, that's what's changing too. I think more about clothes and more about fashions in the films and stuff. I mean, look at Clueless 27 years later. There's other films. I mean, did you see the Do Revenge? There's a film now.
Oh, no.
You have to, I think it's just came out maybe a month or two ago. You have to check it out. And it's kind of like almost, she took a lot of inspiration from Clueless, but it's like another wave of new
How people. Is it called? Do Revenge?
Do Revenge, yeah.
Okay.
Revenge. Yeah.
Okay, I'll check that.
But many films, this is just a silly example, but I think there's just so much more now that there's just really beautiful work. When you look at the Academy, I mean, Black Panther and all this other stuff, that's just like gorgeous. It's like, I'm so proud of my colleagues. I mean, we have an amazing body of work, and I urge your listeners to also go on the CDG website. That's Costume Designers Guild website, which is beautiful. It really showcases our art and who we are. There's so many great stories to, you can see interviews with different costume designers. You can read the history. which is really fun. And I think that's, again, awareness, which will help.
Yes, definitely. And the work they're doing on Instagram as well is very smart and
people like you who are doing the podcast and magazine covers. There's a lot more coverage now about our work, in Vanity Fair and bigger Hollywood Reporter.
Definitely.
Wonderful, so it's visibility that's can really help and change things.
I really hope so.
Yeah.
And for like an uplifting mood, for my last question, yes. I was wondering like if there's anything specific, like any kind of project you'd really like to work on later, and why, like any dream film or series.
I mean, I love creating things from scratch, so yes. Any kind of fantasy thing would be really fun. I think I would really enjoy doing something like that again. But I also love working with different actors, and sometimes actors are really inspiring. I just did actually with Kaylee Cuoco from the Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
Yeah, I just did a movie with her called Role Play in Berlin, and she played an assassin, and it was super fun. Last year I worked with Liam Neeson, which was so wonderful. So also actors, directors inspire you. I think that, it's more about connecting with someone too, because it's really creatively, you have to, when you have a meeting with the director or an actor, when there's some kind of like simpatico and you see the vision similar, and you can get excited, and you can, there's an ease in exchanging information together. That's really fun, when you come, and sometimes it's so hard because they don't want to talk to you, or you really see things super differently and there's no flow. That's where it's hard. And I think now what I look more for in the projects that I want to do is the flow, kind of the creative flow, because I am bringing something to the table. I have a body of work. This is who I am. This is how I see my world. So can I come and help you lift your project and lift your idea? So there has to be some kind of respect. And so I think there's ideas that I would love to do, but also finding those connections, those creative connections,
the right people.
Important. Yeah. And I think that, again, for your audience, and, that's very important to create those connections, from a young costume designer, actor, creating those connections with directors and working with them repeatedly, which I do. That's really important, because then you have kind of your tribe that trusts you, that loves you. If you work with the same actors, like I work with Drew Barrymore for 25 years, Alicia Silverstone, Gina Davis, many actresses. There is a shorthand. They already trust you. The director trusts you. They know what they want to come through, that you're going to have some interesting idea. So creating those long lasting connections are really important, I think in our careers. Same for you, I'm sure, when you have, or certain magazines that you work with, or it's very important, the kind of continuity to have in the career.
Definitely. It's a very interesting advice. Thank you for sharing it.
And, and I want to add one more thing, again, for your audience. It's like when I talked about finding your true self, finding your own kind of art point of what you are good at. I do a lot of meditation. And I think that when you are trying to get inspired, or, everything kind of to me is inspiring, but when I really want to sit down and, think of something, I don't always go and Google. Yes. I will go to the libraries. I look at art books. I look at photography. I look even sometimes at books about animals or sea animals or something. But also meditation is really important, because you have to kind of slow down, empty your head, because there's so many voices, and I think so many like, oh, maybe I should do it like this, or they did it like this, or what is it? If you can kind of like sit with yourself, it's almost like being bored. That's what it feels like. Maybe in that place something can come up that is unique to you. Maybe there's a different little spark of something, or an idea or something pops in, and that's where it can come, that it's very unique to you. So I advise everybody to do a meditation, maybe even 2 minutes in the morning and 2 minutes at night, and then maybe you can go to 5 minutes and 10 minutes. I do 20 minutes if I have time, 10 minutes minimum, and that really helps because it kind of grounds you. It kind of creates a little bit of a space from all that madness that we have. And I think there's a lot of madness now with COVID and all the things that are happening in the world. How do we get strong ourselves and kind of believe in ourselves a little bit? So when we walk into the room, there's a little bit of like confidence, and not necessarily just confidence from all the other sources, but your own personal confidence, and I think that's a really winning thing to have.
You've been listening to Profession Costumière with Mona May. You can see sketches and costumes by Mona on Instagram at Profession Costumière. You can also check Mona's account at It's Mona May. And please check the Costume Designers Guild Instagram account at CDG Local 892. Very interesting content on that account as well. If you like Profession Costumière, you can encourage the podcast by giving it 5 stars and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to be the first to know when a new episode is out. Thanks for listening!